Here we go. 30 minutes. It is 20 minutes till midnight on March 29th, Thursday, 2018. There's an Edward Galleramo quote: when you need to say something, you're going to express it. It's going to come out of your pores. It's going to come out somehow. If you need to say something, it's going to come out. So this whole thing is just about the Constitution, about how little Americans know about the Constitution and how shitty the Constitution actually is, how it's been in need of a update, a rewrite for 200 years or however long it was, 1787. So that's 13 plus 18. 235 years ago. So 235 years ago, a bunch of slave owners, 15 of the 55 founders were slave owners. So when we talk about how great the founding fathers of America is, when we put George Washington on a pedestal, we ignore that John Adams and Alexander Hamilton were opposed to slavery. So even in that time, we got Confederates still today who still for slavery and racism and either killing black people or making them slaves. That's what a Confederate is. And if you don't agree with their hatred of black people, then they'll hate you. A Confederate is a very dangerous person. So the World War II and the Civil War are holy wars. The Revolution, I'm a bit 50-50 on it. The only good thing that came out of the Revolution was the Bill of Rights. And the Bill of Rights guarantees, the 10 essential freedoms and rights. And also there's some other ones too, the right to protect habeas corpus. So there's some rights and freedoms that were protected and enshrined and encapsulated and codified, right, in mortality in this 1787 document. And it also was supposed to be an update from the Articles of Confederation. So this would be the second Constitution that we had. The first one didn't, last 12 years? But it did win the Revolution for us. So it was strong enough to win the Revolution, but it was when Shays' Rebellion happened, they're like, holy shit, Shays' Rebellion just happened. So that means these poor, farmers that fought in the American Revolution, these are American revolutionaries. These are the original, the people that were in Valley Forge freezing to death. And then most of them, froze and starved to death. 10,000 or so. I forget exactly the number, but it was way too many. But we're supposed to read Valley Forge as, God, Americans were so quiet. When they, dignified, did what they need to do. We did not take care of the American Revolutionary War soldier. And we don't take care, a lot of our soldiers today are homeless. So we don't really take care. But the Shays' Rebellion, it happened, about 10 years. Let's see, 87, so 86, 83, right? You have the signing of the Treaty of Paris. And then 86, 3 years later, you have Daniel Shays. Daniel Shays was an American revolutionary, a soldier, one of the original, right? He was actually fighting in the front lines there I don't know if he was at Valley Forge, but he was living those kinds of conditions. The revolution lasted for 7 years, or at least if you start 1776, right? That if you say the Declaration was the beginning, but Massachusetts actually fought a revolution in 1774, 2 years before, the shot, or 1 year before the shot heard around the world, and 2 years before the Declaration of Independence. So, Shays' Rebellion is important because Shays said, these bankers are taking my farm. He got shot in the leg, so he couldn't work his farm anymore. He couldn't produce as much as he could before, and now the banks were going to take 3 years after the Revolution, when George Washington fought for the French and Indian War. He took a shit ton of the land and pensions that the French and Indian soldiers were supposed to win over. So George Washington, the richest landowner, owns 318 slaves, are supposed to put him on a fucking pedestal. He's probably raping his slaves, right? So great fuck. Why don't we put that on the face of our money, right? A fucking slave raper. Meanwhile, not only do Americans not know about the Constitution, 72% have not read the U.S. Constitution, 37% know none of the freedoms of the First Amendment, 48% knew about the freedom of speech of the First Amendment, 3% knew about the petition. So we don't know about the First Amendment. Only almost half of us know about the freedom of speech part of the First Amendment. 74% of Americans don't know the three branches of government. And, the 70% couldn't answer the question what is the supreme law of the United States? Where does all the law come from? So 70% of Americans couldn't declare where the supreme law of the United States come from. 74% of Americans didn't know 3 branches of government, and 72% of Americans have not read the U.S. Constitution. But, and here's the kicker, 88% of Americans approve of it. You're approving of shit you never even done. So, you know, don't knock it till you try it. Don't praise it until you try it too. So this all is important because really it's over the gun debate. So the run-up to the Iraq War was kind of just a manic obsession, crazy people. And so, you know, I guess it's great that they're putting an issue and we're talking about this issue, you know, to the forefront. But I don't agree with the issue. And we got poverty, and we got homelessness, and we got a war. We're still at war, America. You know that? We invaded Niger now. So, and then drones. Could you imagine living over drones all those fucking years? You think any of the people are going to forget about how we were, you know, terrorizing entire nations, entire communities, entire countries with our drones? You want to talk about weapons of war? And then who are we listening to? Who's in charge around here? Right? Donald. He's the commander-in-chief. So he's number war. He's Mr. Warman. And so Mr. Warman, what's he going to bomb people in Niger for? To make sure they get democracy, to make sure they get, you know, universal health care, to make sure they actually get something good going on in their country? Or is it more likely he's going to steal their oil, like he said he was going to do? That's smart. He's such a smart man. Oh, I went there to steal their oil. Let me read this quote here. I think this is, you know, somebody said, you go to college, but make sure you use it. So I'm a political science major, and I do know about a lot of this stuff, but I cannot believe my fellow Americans just don't know the basics. The 3 branches of government is politics 101. It's American government 101. The Constitution, you have to, you know, swear to it to fight for the armed forces. You're going to defend the Constitution when you haven't read it? Why are you defending something you haven't read? You just, you know, swear an allegiance to something. It's easier just to be obedient, to go along with it. Know what the fuck you're talking about. I agree with the Bill of Rights, okay? I like the 3 branches of government. There's some things I really like about the Constitution, and there's other things I really, you know, detest. But at least I know about it. So when I'm talking about Constitution, you know, it's, you know, I'm glad that we had a Constitution. Before the Constitution, it was just the king, and the king just ruled by decree. Whenever the fuck he felt like it, he just said, okay, these are the rules now. And that's tyranny, and that's bullshit. It's arbitrary, and it's tyrannical, and we just have to go with the whims of some fucking asshole. So that's the reason we got the 3 branches of government. That being said, I can't stand the Electoral College. I can't stand the fact that women weren't allowed to vote, or men who didn't own property, or Native Americans, or black people. It was anti-democracy. Electoral College, anti-democracy. So then the superdelegates, so they're using that same fucking shitty model in 1787, and the whole point of the Constitution was to stop people from being like Shea. Daniel Shea got shot in the leg, he couldn't pay his bills, so he was confronting the bankers, and he was basically saying, this is my land, and you're not going to take it. And a lot of other Massachusetts farmers and former Revolutionary War soldiers agreed with him. So it's called Shea's Rebellion. And Thomas Jefferson wasn't even around for the 1787 Constitution. Most people would consider Thomas Jefferson to be a founding father, but really that term is only for the signers of the U.S. Constitution. The U.S. Constitution created this nation, right? So and then we've been using that same central governing document, the supreme law of the land. Immigrants know that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. Immigrants know that we have 3 branches of government. Immigrants have read some part of the Constitution because they have to know it. They have to understand, you know, at least some basic form of how our government is supposed to be ran. But we don't expect anything out of each other, out of our citizens. We meet, a lot of us are Christians, so we meet up on Sundays and we talk about this 2,000-year-old book that has no bearing on our reality whatsoever, and then yet we don't get together and read the Constitution. That sounds like a much more productive meeting to me. Let's get together and read not just our Constitution, other constitutions, and let's rewrite this fucking thing, you know, every 10 years or so. So I think it's every generation must win their own freedoms, and rewriting the Constitution is one of the most best non-violent, revolutionary ways you could change all society. Just like Bobby Fischer chess. If you play chess with the old rules, that's okay. But if you play Bobby Fischer chess, then you're, you know, rearranging those back pieces. The opponents are choosing how those back pieces go, and then you play from there. That's more varied, it's more interesting, it's more random, and there's so much more infinite possibilities with that. So he just basically made chess an incredible fucking game. So by rewriting the rules, you increase and you make things better. So you increase the fun of it, right? So here is Brutus, number one. He's an anti-federalist, and he was writing about this. Patrick Henry said, I smell a rat about the U.S. Constitution. Thomas Jefferson wasn't a part of the Constitution, and Thomas Jefferson had said that with the Shays Rebellion, that the tree of liberty is watered with the blood of tyrants and of patriots. And we need a revolution every 10 to 20 years or so. So he wasn't opposed to Shays Rebellion, but he's an ambassador in France at the time. So while good old, TJ, old Thomas Jefferson, who was a slave owner too, but he, I don't know, anyways, they're all very much compromised, but he's the one that said, we're all born equal and the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, the Declaration of Independence. There's a lot of good things that he did, but while he was gone, they made sure they wrote this fucking document behind his back, and it was because of Shays Rebellion. And so on Shays Rebellion, Thomas Jefferson said it was a good thing. We need a revolution every so often just to keep it, keep things honest, keep things fair. And yet, we've kept this same 1787 document. We haven't had a revolution, any kind of constitutional revolution, electoral revolution. Every time there's an election, we can change the leadership. So if we, ultimately revolution is if it's good, right? So if it changes everything and then the net positive is a good thing. So if I say that, oh my God, getting a dishwasher would revolutionize my life, it would. I cannot stand doing the dishes, throwing everything into the dishwasher, pushing a button, and then all of it's clean. That revolutionizes my life because it changes one aspect of my life that I can't stand, but it changes it substantially, frees it up, and I, won't resent doing it. And I have clean dishes. I won't have dirty dishes on my sink for a week. But it's good, right? It changes my entire life, and it's good. So elections, we can change the leadership, and then if it's the net positive, because you can't really determine, why you're in this shit. But I think when, during FDR's time, when he had the New Deal, I think I could have understood then. I think I could have understood that the New Deal was, a good thing, and that it was revolutionary. I think I could have been smart enough to, be able to point that out. So, and just like LBJ is a confusing figure because they threw him out of the Vietnam War. Because of the Vietnam War, Hunter S. Thompson couldn't stand, LBJ. But LBJ was the one with the Great Society. LBJ is the one with the Civil Rights Act. LBJ was the one with the War on Poverty. LBJ was, a fantastic politician, and he was actually domestically, probably one of the greatest presidents, up there with FDR and Bernie Sanders. So, Brutus. 1787. He's an anti-federalist, and he wrote under Brutus. And so he's sitting there talking about how we got to be, they're writing a constitution for generations to come, and so we got to make sure, because when the people once part with power, they can sell them or never resume it again, but by force. So when we get rid of, our rights and freedoms, when we part with power, we are giving it up, and that's another thing about it. Says we don't have it's a flashy democracy, so we don't have a pure, direct democracy. But this is what he's saying, that it's very important when it comes to writing the Constitution. So the first question was, are they going to do the Articles of Confederation, or are they going to do, a federal system? So they're going to change it out, and eventually they're going to chuck out the Articles and then rewrite the everything. And then he's talking about taxes. He says it's one of the most important powers that you have. If the state is taxing and the federal government is taxing, well, that's just too much fucking taxing now, isn't it? They say about armies, they limit the states for the armies, and so essentially he sees that it's going to turn into just one big nation, one big government, and not 50 governments under a confederation, right? The Confederacy. It's the United States. That's what USA is, the United States. So the states run themselves, and then we're all part of this thing. So, and fixed salaries. What I liked about this was essentially you have Brutus is quoted, or Baron de Montesquieu. He quotes Brutus quotes Baron de Montesquieu in his Spirit of Laws. So he wrote this book called The Spirit of Laws, and he said it is natural to a republic to only have a small territory. Otherwise, it cannot long subsist. In a large republic, there are men of large fortunes, and consequently of less moderation. The trust are too great to place in any single subject. He has interests of his own. He soon begins to think that he may be happy, great, and glorious by oppressing his fellow citizens, and that he may raise himself to grandeur on the ruins of his country. In a large republic, the public good is sacrificed to 1,000 views. It is subordinate to exceptions and depends on accidents. In a small one, the interest of the public is easier perceived, better understood, and more within the reach of every citizen. Abuses are of less extent and, of course, less protected. Of the same opinion as the Marquis Beccarii. So this is De Montesquieu, right? This is where they get the three branches of government from. Now, what he is saying in this quote is that you can't have large republics. And he goes on to say that the Greek republics were of small extent, and so were the Romans. They started out by being small, but they came to ruin when they expanded over a large territory, when they became an empire. When they were just a republic, they were good. When they became an empire, they overextended themselves. We're an empire right now. We've been an empire since 1898. That's another thing Americans don't know. 900 military bases, 150 countries. If we're not an empire, what the fuck is an empire? So I guess we're not as vicious as the Mongolians, but we've taken over more of the, more land than the Mongolians, and we have much more firepower than the Mongolians. So he goes on to say that every government, the will of the sovereign is law, but in despotic governments, the supreme authority is being lodged in one. His will is law, whatever King George III wants. So in a pure democracy, the people are the sovereign and their will is declared by themselves. For this purpose, they must all come together to deliberate and decide. This kind of government cannot be exercised, therefore, over a country of any considerable extent. It must be combined to a single city, or at least limited to such bounds as that the people can conveniently assemble to be able to debate, understand the subject submitted to them, and declare their opinion concerning it. So what? What the hell does any of that mean? Well, here in Colorado, we got the right not to referendum. Not only do we have the right to referendum, initiative, and recall, which Americans don't have. Coloradans have more freedoms than most Americans, because in Colorado, if somebody is elected, governor, you can kick that fucker out, the next day if he does some bullshit. So we have the power to recall. We can throw these bums out. We have the power to initiative. We can write our own laws and then have the people vote on the law. And then we have the power to referendum. Also in Colorado, we have the right to have a home rule city. There's about 100 home rule cities. I think exactly 100. Maybe one territory or some shit, but 100 home rule cities here, which means that here in the city of Pueblo, we're a chartered home rule city. We're a Catalonia. We're our own government, our own people unto ourselves. And so the city of Pueblo has a charter, the state of Colorado has a charter, and then the federal government has a charter. So in some respects, we have to listen to three different constitutions. Which one of those are better? You're going to, Tocqueville, I forget his exact quote, but essentially Tocqueville says that we need all three. And if we have a bunch of little republics and then, all of a sudden it just dissipates and we're just 50 states and we're not all Americans, that's okay. He's saying that we would rather disintegrate as Americans into different states than to not be democratic citizens. And not big D Democrat, small d Democrat, people who believe in democracy, that the government is resting upon the people. So, that's when I say Democrats or democracy, democratic, that's what I mean, people who believe in democracy. So for the people that believe in democracy, having small cities, city-states, having the city of Pueblo being allowed to have, their own home rule charter, what that will produce is good citizens in a democracy. By having a small little, we practice democracy in a small little enclave in our, small little city here, and because of the way we practice democracy, that produces good, active citizens who then can go on to the bigger stage, to the state of Colorado, to the federal government, right? But without that sort of incubator, without having incubators, home rule city incubators, we're not going to have good democratic citizens. We're not going to, who's the president? Where are we going to pick the president from? Is it going to just be some rich fucking billionaire, carnival, barker, asshole, some Confederate Führer, some fucking shithole, some ferret-headed Cheetolini? Yain Führer, some Confederate Führer, is that what we're going to do? Commander-in-Chief? So that's, where do we get our citizens? People say that, it's what the politicians suck. The politicians come from the people and they're elected by the people. So if the politicians suck, we suck because we're not picking the good leaders. And why is our system not working right? So it's easy to shit on the leaders anyways. So small republics, according to De Montesquieu, are the only things that we can do. He doesn't believe we can do large republics, only small republics. So a tiny, not tiny, it's 100,000 people, but it's, more governable than a state of 4 or 5 million. Or a, nation of 320 million people. So 320 million Americans, and we have, 435 people representing all of us, all the way on the East Coast. I mean, I think the capital should be, if there was a nuclear war, I know that the elite is going to be hiding in the Rocky Mountains, so that means you should have a capital right here in Colorado. We should have like 3 capitals, right? We want to stop tyranny, but we only have 1 capital city over on the East Coast. They don't know what the hell is going on the West Coast. That's why the West Coast has already legalized freedom, but the centralized government's over there, so they want to make sure they maintain their illegal police state. So, in many instances, okay, so anyways, that's some things from Brutus there, from the Anti-Federalist. How we doing on time? So I got 9 more minutes. Okay, so about 8 after midnight. Now, when I look at the statistics, we don't know shit about our own selves. We don't know other questions. We don't know the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. 8% guess Thurgood Marshall, who was never a Chief Justice of the Court. He was a justice, but what the fuck? They're guessing, right? Was that an option on there, or did they just write in Thurgood Marshall? So, hey, who's the Chief Justice? This is, 2005 or so. But it would be, let's see, it's not Roberts. It's that new fucking guy. It's the one that he just picked, Gorsuch. So that's the Chief Justice, right? Now, more people can name the 3 stooges. More Americans can name the 3 stooges than they can name the 3 branches of government. And they couldn't even name, the Chief Justice. The 8% guessed Thurgood Marshall? What? I mean, that had been a long fucking time ago. Old ass. And then another 4% said Harry Reid, who is just the Senate minority leader. So he's a senator. He's never been a Supreme Court justice in his life. And then Thurgood Marshall, when they took the thing, he had been dead for 17 years. Who's the Chief Justice? Oh, this one Supreme Court justice who died 17 years ago? No, it would be somebody living, right? Somebody was alive. That's Americans don't under 72%. They don't know what the central government document is. They don't know where the supreme law of the land comes from. 74% don't know shit about the 3 branches of government, which is arbitrary, but it's intentional to prevent tyranny. 72% has not read the Constitution, but 88% of Americans approve of it. So 1,000 citizens were asked in a New Week's poll, what is the supreme law? 70% said they couldn't answer. So the answer is the Constitution. Oh, did you know that? Constitution is 3/4 cannot name a power granted to Congress by the Constitution. Yeah, if you didn't read the damn document, you're not going to know the powers. The one important power that only Congress has is the right to declare war. Presidents don't declare war. They can't declare war. Only Congress can declare war. So when we got, people in Niger, why do we got Niger, right? If you want to do the French way, I don't know, Niger. So Niger, we go to Niger, right? The right to war, or not the right to war, but the declaration of war powers only is bequeathed onto Congress, which is the people's body. We got more access to the Congress than we do the Supreme Court justices, maybe federal courts, but that's up in Denver, and the Supreme Court executive, that's so far removed, but we do have, Scott Titton. I got 2 senators, so that's sort of very removed, right? So these are so fucking far. Michael Bennet isn't going to listen to what the fuck I say. Michael Bennet voted to repeal or to undo Dodd-Frank, so he's helping the bankers out. And then you get Cory Gardner, who gets a lot of NRA and right-wing money and shit, but he defends marijuana legalization from time to time, but they're just so far removed from me. So because we live in a large republic, or a large empire, America is an empire. So since we live in an empire, these folks are the ones that represent me. But Scott Titton, there's 6 or 7 representatives in Colorado. Scott Titton is basically the entire western portion, the entire third of the state, of the entire Rocky Mountain side of the state. So the most beautiful piece of the, of land in the entire United States. Scott Titton is our man. But he runs, over a third of the state. That's what, 1 to 2 million people that he's, and it's probably, anyway. So that's as much as representation that we get. So if Congress We could go. I saw the mayor's office that Stephon Clark, even though I disagree with their, sort of opinion, he didn't deserve to die. I don't think it's a moral thing, but I think legally, what the fuck? He was robbing people and shit. So when people are being, robbing, we're just supposed to be like, well, c'est la vie, what the fuck ever. No, that's bullshit. People work hard for this shit, and if other people just like, they're rapists, right? A rapist says, you know what, I want to have sex with that person, but they don't want me to have sex with them, so I'm just going to take it. Same thing with a thief. Thief says, hey, I want the stuff that you have, but I don't want to work for it myself. I just want to take it from you. And murder, right? Any of this stuff. So that's, anyways, he's not an angel is all I'm trying to say with that. And then, but you had the one scene where his brother's like, dancing or whatever, like kind of enjoying a protest, and then he hops up onto the desk of the mayor, and the mayor jumps up, and he got real scared, right? Oh, now you feel a little bit scared, right? You lived in your comfortable, fucking elite middle-class lifestyle, sitting on top, right? Sitting on high on your little bench up there and acting like everybody's supposed to kiss your fucking ass, but he got to feel a little bit of the fear that, the people got to, and he was scared, and he was like, oh my God, he was looking for somebody to help him out, but none of the police were ready to, they were going to let him do their demonstration. He just sat on the desk, and that's all he did, and just kept sort of chanting. But we can't do that with the Congress. We can't do that with the presidency. We can do that with our mayor. We can do that with our local cities. We can do that with our counties. We can do that with the water board and the civil service board and the school board. We can do it locally. So with local, by having home rule local governments, that makes good citizens. It makes good citizens, okay? So let's get some more of these facts here, because I'm not going to get to the origins of the U.S. Constitution. I'll touch on Shays' Rebellion just a little bit, but barely 1/3 of Americans can even name the 3 branches of government, right? 75% can name the 3 stooges, right? So you have 74% is what I got. 74% can't name all 3 branches of government. They say they can't even name one branch. So you need to know all 3 branches. You can't just be like, oh, I know the executive and and what? And what? There's 2. The legislature. There's 2 others. There's only fucking 3 of them, for fuck's sake. So 74% of Americans don't even know that, but 75% of Americans can name the 3 stooges. 77% can name 2 of the 7 dwarfs, right? Happy, grumpy, sleepy. But just 24% knew 2 of the 9 Supreme Court justices. So. I think Ruth Bader Ginsburg is still up there. I'm not sure Stevens. I feel like I want to say Stevens is there. Gorsuch is just put in. You had, what's his fucking name? That Alito. You had Hispanic lady. Shoot. Sonia Sotomayor. So there's 4 or so. So 57% of Americans could name fictional boy wizard Harry Potter, but less than half could name Great Britain's real Prime Minister Tony Blair. Theresa May is the Prime Minister now. So and then we got the cabinet, the War Department, the Secretary of State, and all these other major important positions. And ignorance is going to be the death of us, and we're living in the age of information. So that's ridiculous. Information should not be the death of us when we live in the age of information. So, what? So what? Who gives a shit? Well, you're going to try to tell me that you're going to get rid of my freedom of speech. You're going to try to tell me you're going to get maybe, perhaps, if we started actually having a sensible conversation about guns, but just outright banning guns across the board, essentially the analysis is this. Guns are bad. Guns kill people. Oh, we need to get rid of the guns. But now that they've done said power comes out of barrel guns, so you get rid of the guns. Guns are still going to be out there. Guns kill, people, but they kill, animals too, and they also kill bad people. So if somebody has a gun and they're going to go around and kill people, well, you're going to need a gun to kill that person. But then we're going to have to wait for what? The police to get to there? If you're living out in the countryside, that means 30 minutes. So if basically, God, get rid of the guns, right? Go ahead and take everybody's guns, and then all you need to get is one AK-47. Go out to the countryside, just go door to door, because cops won't, be there. You can probably hit 5 houses and then drive on out of there. So by the time the cops get there, there won't be nothing for them to do, or the event is over. So for self-defense, I think self-defense is a very important thing. So we need to have a better conversation with guns, but you're not going to take away all my freedoms. We got 50 rights and freedoms that you don't know shit about, but you're saying guns are bad, right? And that's it. then you also must feel protected by the police, because power comes out of the barrel of a gun, so therefore you think that society's guns are protecting you. You think that the guns are on your side and that they're good. So state violence, you're appealing to state violence to stop private violence, whereas Black Lives Matter is appealing to, I guess, private violence to stop state violence. How are you going to stop, state violence without private? So then that's kind of the Second Amendment anyways, to stop a tyrannical government. You're not going to oppress an armed population. You're not going to oppress, and then so the people that don't have guns just want everybody to be as powerless as them, or maybe they feel protected by the police, they feel protected by the military, and so they just don't want their